Hi, Mom.
Hi, Miracle Mom and Michael.
Hello, anybody who watches this. This is Mom on the phone. This is her picture, and that's the name of the channel, Miracle Mom and Michael. Uh, for those of you who don't know, Mom survived well, a couple of near-death experiences, but most recently, she's by inarguable miracle she is alive today, and that's why we hear her voice, and it's motivated me to call Mom more often and get to know my own mom a little better. So, one of the things we have been doing, is talking about scripture, and sometimes we do a verse of the day. And I think Mom has a verse for today. Is that right, Mom?
Yes, Mom does.
You're, you're cutting out a bit, Mom. Say that again.
Oh, I said yes, Mom does.
Oh, yeah. Do you want to go ahead and read it or begin?
Sure, I took it from the book of John, it's chapter 20, and it's about the empty tomb when Peter and John ran to the tomb.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm beginning in chapter 6, or verse 6, and I'm quoting, this is the New International Version, but it says, Then Simon Peter, who was behind John,
Mm-hmm.
arrived and went into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the burial cloth that had been around Jesus' head. The cloth was folded up by itself, separate from the linen. And that's verse 6 and 7.
John chapter
And
John chapter 20 verses 6 and 7.
correct.
Okay.
And there's a detail in that verse. I'm not sure how many people, when they read it, realize the significance of the cloth that was folded up by itself, separate from the linen. And there's a specific meaning to that, and it has to do with the Jewish culture at that time, the Hebrews' culture. In a household where there was a master and a servant, the servant was very attentive to the master when he would sit down at the table to dine.
Mm-hmm.
And what it involved is, when the master was finished eating, he would take the napkin from the table and wad it up and put it next to the plate. And that signaled to the servant that the master was finished eating, so the servant could clear the table and take care of those duties. Well, if the master folded the napkin and put it down beside the plate and got up and left the room, and the servant saw that, he understood that the master wasn't finished. The message was, I'm coming back.
So if the napkin is folded, it's a signal that he's not done.
Correct, he's not done. I'm coming back. So the servant would not touch the table
Mm.
and wait for the master to return. And when the disciples got in the tomb and they saw that napkin folded up next to the pile of linen, it was the only one folded up, they understood, I'm coming back.
I love that those details are there's so many details when you read that you can gloss over it, or you can be
Oh, I
confused. You
know.
can
My,
get confused by it, but
I never knew that even until, I don't know, maybe a year ago. Someone pointed it out, and I went and researched it, and it's true. Jesus even at the time of his death and being in the tomb, when he resumed life, he was communicating with the disciples, with the ones who loved him. When they got there, knowing they're upset, knowing they're afraid, knowing they're confused, he's still communicating with them. The tomb is open, I'm coming back. And the other thing is, the stone being rolled away from that tomb, Jesus could have walked through that rock.
Right.
We all know that.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that the stone was rolled away was to allow them in.
Right.
Not him out.
Right. That's a good point.
So, I don't know, there are things like that we read it and we don't think anything about it and we go, oh, that's great, but then when you get down to just the details in there, everything is so magnificent.
Well, I have
anyway, that's my verse for today.
John chapter 20, verses 6 and 7.
Yeah.
Starting where Peter, and right before that verse, like John and Peter had been notified by Mary, because Mary was the first one.
Right.
And then she ran and said, she said, what did she say? Oh, the different gospels have it differently. And someone said they've taken my Lord or something.
Yeah.
But Peter and John set out immediately, running full speed. And John doesn't ever refer to himself in his own gospel as John. He's always the one that Peter loved or the other disciple. And he outran Peter. I mean, he makes a point. He got there first, but Peter goes in. And Peter's like, why are you waiting out here? He goes straight in. And then they see the bedclothes, or the grave clothes, bedclothes. This is one thing I was going to bring up, and I guess this is an appropriate time. Rather than doing a whole separate segment on it, I'll mention it here. Similar to one of the other podcasts episodes that we have about David and Goliath. You know how I said I don't think David killing Goliath was the miracle. I think there's another miracle here. Where's the miracle? The miracle was Saul putting the entire nation of Israel on the shoulders of this 14-year-old or 15, or how old, this teenage boy, trusting the entire future of the nation to this kid who thinks he can kill this giant. That to me is the miracle. But I like to think about, what's the greatest miracle? Another podcast was, what's your favorite miracle? I asked you what your favorite miracle in the Old Testament was, and you mentioned the Red Sea, the parting of the Red Sea. But in the entire scriptures, what's the greatest miracle? And I think most Christians would say, well, it's the resurrection of Christ, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the most important. I mean, that's the most important thing for Christianity. If you don't believe Jesus rose bodily from the grave and is still alive, because that's what the resurrection is. It's not just coming back to life.
Right.
Jesus rose, Jesus brought Lazarus back to life, but he died again.
Yeah.
Right? But Jesus rose once and for all. I would say the resurrection is not actually the greatest miracle.
Okay. Explain.
Am I being blasphemous?
No. No, I don't think so.
You know what? I'm gonna make this a tease for another segment here. I'm gonna slate it, and for the viewer, for anyone who happens to view this, they're gonna have to wait until the next episode. For you and I, we're about to talk about it, but I'm gonna slate this right here. So, what was the greatest miracle? I don't think it was the resurrection.